Thanks, Margaret. To my fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen, and for those watching on webcast, good morning and thank you for being here at this very important event. Today, I will argue that one of the casualties of an increasingly polarized world is the press. The traditional media, your daily newspaper or favorite online news site, the evening news or the radio station you listen to. There is a concerted effort to undermine our profession, and it's working. Just take a look at the fake news websites that spread disinformation at our expense, or this not-so-subtle creep that has somehow legitimized the convergence of entertainment and news where the facts are no longer sacrosanct. Our profession is being abused. The credibility of stories undermined, their authors, editors, and institutions that run them constantly disparaged in the knowledge that there are no real consequences, that it's okay to bash the media because nobody in power really likes having them around anyway, even though publicly the romance is real. When a certain United States president issued a recent travel ban against 7 and then 6 countries in Africa and the Middle East, the so-called news story about about free visa travel to the United States from places like Ghana and South Africa started doing the rounds. I would get emails from excited South Africans planning their next holiday to the United States asking me if it was true. It angered me not only because these fake news websites exist in the first place, but that society is so easily swept up in the euphoria of these lies. And because societies are so gullible due to reasons I will not delve into at this briefing, the risks to real journalism have never been greater. No president is arrested for insulting the press. But print or broadcast a story that shows a president in a poor light, and in some places you are arrested, thrown into jail, and accused of treason. In other places, we are called up and berated, or worse, our editors get calls from aides or chiefs of staff who cajole or threaten depending on the time of day. And the outrage from those you would expect to defend you? Well, the outrage is often muted. The response is generally in the form of broad written statements that acknowledge the importance of a free and open society, but fail to address the specificity of the insults, the arrests, or the flagrant abuse of power. Those statements are generally issued on World Press Freedom Day, and are expected to offer cover for every infraction that might occur anywhere in the world for the next 365 days. Why has saying the right thing become so much harder for those who have the ability to make people listen? Why is saying the right thing something to be well scripted and coordinated so as not to offend leader A or B in an era where the populist insults directed at the press grow louder and more targeted? Taking the higher ground sometimes just shows weakness and often has no impact in effecting the change we all hope to see. The Committee to Protect Journalists has labeled Turkey the world's worst jailer of journalists, closing 178 news outlets in the space of 5 months. A news poll in the United States says Americans trust what comes out of the White House more than they trust the reporters that cover the presidency. Media freedom is constantly being restricted in South Sudan, something that was very unlikely in the lead up to their independence in 2011. Journalists are berated by law enforcement in South Africa, forced to delete images off their phones or cameras, or accused of taking sides in political discourse through reporting the facts that one side or the other disagrees with. That we work in a contested space is not at issue here. Such is the nature of the job. We understand that. What is dangerous is when the journalist is viewed as a problem for reporting on the bad behavior rather than the bad behavior itself. And here's the real kicker. In a world of fake news and alternative facts, the facts are still what save us. Facts are often the difference between the right choice and the wrong one. Climate change, for example, should no longer be debated, and yet it's still a contested space. The leaps we have witnessed in science just in our lifetimes helps us make the best decisions from healthcare to agriculture, because facts matter. When facts no longer matter, then peace deals break apart. When facts no longer matter, people die because of hunger and disease. When facts don't matter, human rights are abused and impunity reigns. When facts don't matter, wars become protracted rather than brief. Goal 16 of the SDGs calls for the promotion of peaceful and inclusive societies, recognizing how a free press is closely linked to the access of information and the promotion of human rights. The SDGs, I will contend here, will be severely threatened or compromised if the media continues to suffer from the or a incontinence of attacks being directed at us while we are being sacrificed at the altar of short-term political expediency. So it might not be too far-fetched to suggest that journalism as we know it is facing an existential threat from forces that seek to undermine public trust in what we do. In the end, we still believe that truth matters, facts reign, and lies fade under the bright lights of an open and free society. But journalists or free press NGOs cannot fight that battle alone. We need voices from the grassroots to editorial boards, the executive officers of multinational companies, heads of government and state and multilateral organizations to speak up loudly and boldly in the face of unprecedented levels of deceit that not only threatens how journalism functions, but how a rules-based society works. One that seeks to effect change and secure a sustainable future for everyone. Under the circumstances I have just laid out, it is incumbent on everyone to be a bit more wily, but for those in power to more publicly challenge those who abuse that privilege. In other words, check the source of the story before hitting share on Twitter and Facebook. And as former South African President Nelson Mandela said, and I quote, "A critical, independent, and investigative press is the lifeblood of any democracy. The press must be free from state interference. It must have the economic strength to stand up to the blandishments of government officials. It must have sufficient independence from vested interests to be bold and inquiring without fear or favor. It must enjoy the protection of the Constitution so that it can protect our rights as citizens," closed quotes. And if anyone here would like to disagree with Nelson Mandela, I would like to hear why. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sherwin, for your